in what was one of the most predictable national title outcomes we have had in recent years, UConn does it. They blow out Purdue, handle them, and they win their second straight national title. Why I say the most predictable is Purdue had no chance in this game. Because what UConn has showed you the last few years is if you play a similar style of basketball, anywhere near similar to what UConn runs, they'll embarrass you. You cannot, college basketball has learned, you cannot beat UConn at their own game. And a lot of these teams play a similar style to UConn. And that's why I thought really the national title for the Huskies, it wasn't won on Monday night. I thought it was won on Saturday night. Because that Alabama offense, the way they shoot the three and how deadly they are, that was their biggest test, really, that they faced in 2 years. In the tournament, at least. Because if Alabama was able to hit a few more threes, they could win that game. But that style gave UConn problems. It's a style they're not used to seeing, and a style that does prey on the vulnerability of UConn, which is their lack of three-point shooting. And so once UConn was able to pass that test on Saturday, tonight was just a formality. Purdue, going into this game had no chance to win this game. And after about the first 10, 12 minutes, you saw it play out that way. We're going forward. UConn had the momentum. They controlled the game. And the first 2 minutes and a half, you said, okay, this game's over. Could have went to bed. That's it. So not a surprise whatsoever that UConn won. Not a surprise that they won by double digits and dominated 80% of this game. That's what they've been doing. And that's why I wanted to kind of take a step back here and look at what they've accomplished, not just this year, the last 2 years. We just witnessed history. I think we just witnessed the most dominant 2-year stretch we'll ever see in the NCAA tournament. We've never seen anything like this before, and I don't think we'll see anything like this going forward. Because this level of dominance, it's unsustainable. It is historic how good and how easy UConn made the most difficult tournament in all of sports look the last 2 seasons. Let me throw some numbers by here just to highlight that statement. Because I think it's easy to get caught up in the moment. I'm not getting caught up in the moment, though. This is not one of those, like, prisoner of the moment. Wow, what a great run, but we'll see one, surpass it in a year or two. The last 2 years, what UConn was able to do in dismantling all 12 opponents they have faced, we will never, in consecutive tournament runs, see what we just saw from UConn. It's never going to happen again. Look at what the Huskies just did. In the 6 games it took to win this year's tournament, they won by an average of 23.3 points per game. A record. They blew everybody out. There was not a game that was really in doubt late. Alabama somewhat, but other than that, they put every game away by halftime or 3 minutes, 5 minutes outside of halftime. That is the largest margin of victory for an entire tournament run in history. But then you look at what they did last year. 20 points per game was their average margin of victory, one of the highest margins we've ever seen. So in consecutive years, they put on a historic performance last year, then won up to this year with the biggest margin of victory we've ever seen. I got more numbers for you in terms of how historic this was. Last year, 2023, when UConn won their 5th national title, UConn won every game that year by at least 13 points. Only team ever. Not John Wooden's UCLA teams, not Coach K's Duke teams. No one in NCAA tournament history has won every game by at least 13 points until UConn did it last year. You know how they followed that historic run up last year, this year? By winning every game by at least 14 points. They have gone through 2 consecutive tournaments where the closest margin of victory was 13 points. There was no sweat. There was no scare. We've seen plenty of great teams win championships and have to survive a game. Maybe get lucky or late. It's a close 1 or 2 possession game with a minute to go against a team they have no business playing against. They dominated from start to finish, literally every single team they played. No team has ever done that before, and I don't see that level of dominance, but not just level of dominance, level of consistent dominance happening again. It's not. This is unbelievable. Don't take what you just saw for granted or think you're going to see it again. This is truly historic. We are witnessing history live. Right? Usually you got to take 5, 10, 15, 20 years to kind of look back and appreciate what you're watching. We right now in the moment need to recognize what we're watching and how rare and how impossible of a feat Dan Hurley and UConn, what they just accomplished. First overall seed since Louisville as well back in 2013 to win it all. But what's so impressive too is you look at in terms of recent history. UConn back-to-back, Florida 06-07 back-to-back, Duke in the early 90s back-to-back. But what's different with UConn compared to those other teams that have gone back-to-back, this was essentially a different team. I won't say totally different. There's some holdovers. But this is a drastically different team last year to this year. Florida basically ran it back from 06-07. Duke, same thing, ran it back. There's no running it back here with UConn. Bench players now become starters. Transfers come in and into the starting lineup. And it's just like this, the level of dominance somehow increased. That's also what makes this so impressive, is it's not only consistent dominance last year and this year, it's consistent dominance with two different teams, with a bunch of different contributors. That is what is so amazing about this run and why it's so historic. There was little continuity. There wasn't a lot of carryover. There's not one dominant star on UConn that just made everyone's life easy. Kind of like Zach Edey with Purdue. There's no Zach Edey on UConn. It is just 5 guys collectively that are unstoppable. But a big reason why, though, I think we saw this 2-year dominant run, and a big reason why, by the way, there's a real chance we could see a three-peat for the first time in college basketball since the late 60s, early 70s UCLA teams that won 7 in a row. So what is that, going on 50 years? There's a real chance we can see a three-peat for the first time in 50 years in college basketball next year with Dan Hurley and UConn, because it doesn't matter who's in and who's out. Dan Hurley's group has 3 principles that they all have, that every player that they recruit has. Tenacity, relentlessness, selflessness. Like you see, we hear it a lot in college sports because whether it's football, basketball, right, usually the head coach is the program, right? Kids cycle in and out 3 or 4 years, but the coach is the mainstay. And I think one of the best compliments you can give any college team is that the team reflects the identity of the head coach, right? That's, I think, what every coach strives for. And Dan Hurley has done that to perfection. Like you see it tonight, right, on the sidelines, late in the game. He is chewing out the refs. He's illegally pushing his own player on the court to run the offense and run the set. He is maniacal. He is insane, but he never takes his foot off the gas. He is relentless in his energy. He is high energy, barking 24/7 as soon as the ball is tipped. So forget the final whistle. To like the post-game press conference, to the team bus, to the team flight home, he is always on. And when you watch UConn, they reflect that. They reflect the craziness, the psychoticness of their head coach in an organized manner on the floor. UConn does not, they don't stop on the court. Just like their head coach, they keep going. You heard it on the broadcast. UConn comes in waves and waves and waves. And you've seen it the last 2 years in the tournament. You can have a team hang around for the first 10 minutes. You can have a team hang around for the first 20 minutes of the game. You can have a team hang around the first 30 minutes of the game. But what Dan Hurley knows in the back of his mind, and what the UConn players have this instilled in them as well, is we are going to break you. The only thing we don't know is when we're going to break you. We know we are going to break you. And you see that relentless effort continue from the moment the ball is tipped to the moment they're dribbling out the clock for another win. They keep coming at you. They don't stop. It's waves, offensively and defensively. They're always moving on offense. 5 guys always moving in flow. The ball is moving. They're selfless in terms of their passes, always looking to set up the other guy, always looking to get easy looks. Defense, they're in your face. They're guarding you the entire 30 seconds on the shot clock. They're crashing the boards as a team. They're getting the rebound. If you get the rebound, well, they're going to try to poke it away from you and steal it from you. Like, they literally don't take a breath. And you saw, especially Zach Edey, he was gassed on Monday night. He was winded because UConn didn't give him a break. Just like their head coach, who is nonstop, who is always in the official's ear, who's always going crazy, who's always coaching his hardest, no matter if the score is 0-0 or they're up by 40, he continues to coach his very hardest, very Nick Saban-like. The team reflects that. The team doesn't stop. They're tenacious. They're relentless. And again, they are selfless. Whether it's guys coming off the bench that were used to being starters, whether it's in the offense not having to have volume shooters. Like, you had 4 different guys for UConn in the 6 games lead them in scoring. Every game it's someone different. Every game there's a different hero, and it's like they want that. They enjoy that. They don't want one star carrying them. They want 5 deep. All 5 starters in the regular season average double figures. So it's like with UConn, there's not one guy you could say, oh, we got to stop him and we're good. You got to stop all 5. Good luck with that. That's where the selflessness comes in. But UConn, why they were so dominant the last 2 years, and why even with a different roster, they've been able to maintain and exceed their dominance from last year to this year, is the fact that every single guy Danny Hurley brings in is basically the player version of himself as a coach. Relentless, tenacious, selfless. Those 3 boxes are checked by every single player in the team, and that's why we saw a dominant run, a historic dominant run last year, get one-upped by this same team but different players this year. Unbelievable to watch. It's been, honestly, as a non-UConn fan, it's been just a blast because they have made it look easy. Danny Hurley has said this, and I agree with him. They have made a hard tournament look easy. Don't take that for granted. Don't take that for granted. We'll see, I think, repeat champions going forward in college basketball. We will, though, never witness what we just witnessed these last 2 years. This unprecedented run of consistent dominance. New faces from last year to this year, but the results are the same. Blowout victories. Again, just soak that in. The closest game in UConn going back-to-back, the closest margin of victory they had was 13 points. They average margin of victory this year was 23 points. They don't play close games. They just blow everybody out, leave no doubt, and leave you picking up the pieces afterwards. Doesn't matter if you're a defensive style team, offensive style team, good on both ends of the floor. If you're big, if you're small, literally does not matter. UConn will dismantle you. We just witnessed the greatest 2-year NCAA tournament run we've ever seen or will ever see. This was historic. Hat tip to you, Danny Hurley. There's a real chance they're going to go for a 3-peat next year. I'll tell you this right now. I ain't betting against them. That's for sure. Last thing I'll mention before we do get out of here. I love the personality of Danny Hurley. Like, he is perfect for now the next wave of college basketball. Right? You had the stalwarts, the old guard, if you will. Coach K, Roy Williams, Jay Wright. I know Bill Self is kind of in that category and he's holding on. But now it's the new wave of coaches. Nate Oates, Dan Hurley. There is no better face right now for the sport of college basketball taking them to the future than Danny Hurley. He is brash. He's arrogant. He's outspoken. He's confident. He talks a big game, backs it up. That is what college basketball needs. I want more personality from a head coach. I hate the generic, coach speak answers. Oh, we're so happy to be here. They played a great game. That was a really tough opponent. No, I want coaches coming out there and say, yeah, we're just killing everyone. We're blowing everybody out. We're bulletproof. Good luck trying to find a weakness. We're just that good. I respect that. I love that. This is a guy who kind of throws the coach speak playbook out the window. He knows his team's good. Why hide it? What good is it to try to downplay the talent and the accomplishments of your team? If you are truly that, if you believe your team is that good, why hide it? Why run away from it? Embrace it. The team clearly did. They rallied around that. They found Dan Hurley's words to uplift them. Right? They never played tight. They never felt the weight of the world on their shoulders, despite the fact that it was on their shoulders. What they were trying to accomplish was historical and something we've never seen before. And they played like it's a scrimmage in October with how loose they were. So now that Dan Hurley's won back-to-back, and now that a lot of the accomplished classic faces of college basketball have left the scene, no better guy you want taking the sport to the future in the time and era of NIL and transfer portal and things kind of switching in college basketball. No better face right now to have leading your sport than Dan Hurley. College basketball is in good hands. Clearly, UConn is in good hands. But just remember, what we witnessed is not normal. This was a 2-year tournament run of historic proportions that we'll never see again. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends about this channel, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment below. As well, if you're listening to this, Hick at Night podcast, Night spelled N-I-T-E. Can't blame you if you don't want to watch the video with this ugly mug here, so listen. But either way, still appreciate your support. Make sure you do subscribe to the Hick at Night podcast, Night spelled N-I-T-E, available wherever you do get your pods.